If you're a business growth expert and you want a competitive edge that no AI can replicate and few other business growth experts really know how to master, then in this video, I'm going to share with you 6 capabilities I call human-led strategic power and how they can not only set you apart in your market, but can also position you as not just another service provider, not just another agency or vendor, but as a strategic ally to your client's growth. So the first capability is this, that only humans can read other human beings. And yes, I used air quotes for a reason. What I mean by that is that you have all this AI technology tools and all these other business growth experts out there who can't read other human beings. And when you can read another human being, this completely changes the foundation of your relationship. So what do I mean by this? Only humans can hear when someone is saying something and when someone is not saying something. We've all had conversations, maybe even with your kids at times, where you can tell they're telling you part of the story, but not the whole story. And so you got to go in and figure out the rest of it, right? Only humans can notice energy shifts or when their tone changes or when there's hesitation. Only humans can sense when there's resistance or maybe ego or maybe fear. And only humans can use that intuition to know the next right question to ask. And it's only humans who can adapt the pace of a conversation in real time. So improving your skills in these areas makes your work not just transactional, but completely transformational. Now, I'm going to share a little story with you so that this puts this in context. So I've been training a gal who owns a marketing agency to use one of my frameworks in her business. And she was having a conversation with a coach who was looking to scale to $1 million a year in revenue. And in her initial conversation, this coach mentioned multiple times wanting to hit the $1 million mark, needing a marketing roadmap and strategy. And at the same time, she also mentioned being concerned about burnout. So here you have a client, a potential client, who's looking for a certain revenue mark, and they know marketing is the key. So where do they go? A marketing agency. However, there's a couple things that you, as the critical thinking strategist, want to know in order to figure out what your next best moves are. Let's say this gal is at $850,000 a year right now and is willing to do whatever it takes, burnout, disregarded, to get to that revenue mark. Well, you need to know that. Let's say that she's at $250,000 a year and is looking to get to that 1 million mark, but is really worried about this burnout factor. Well, you need to know that because in order to add to her plate any sort of marketing activities that might take up her time or her team's time, you also need to be making the decisions on what comes next. So there are all of these hypothetical things that could be going on. And the only way you will know what is really going on is by taking a step back, listening to those emotional cues and asking about them. Pulling on the threads, I call it, to see if they're anchored to something and what that something is. And all of this sets you up for being that trusted advisor that's going to guide them to get to where they want to go. So this next one I call pattern recognition. And what that really means is being able to connect the dots, to see and read between the lines, between information that doesn't necessarily seem relevant, but is actually highly relevant and highly important. A while back, I worked with a gal who had been working in a physical therapy office, and she was going out and starting her own business, her own brick and mortar location. She was trained in all these different modalities like functional movement and massage therapy, et cetera, et cetera. And when we started working together, I discovered that her plan was not to be profitable for the first 6 months. And I knew there was a better way. I had to figure out what was really at the root of this and what was going on so that she could start out being profitable from day one. What I discovered was that she was actually viewing herself as if she had to prove herself in the market. Almost as if she was someone who had maybe graduated high school, gone to massage therapy school, and was starting out brand new, which was not the case. This gal had not only worked with auto accident victims, but she'd also worked with Olympic athletes, and she herself was an athlete. She was often paid to hop on a plane and fly to exotic places like Bermuda and run obstacle course races in the mud. She had a network of established elite professionals and athletes in her world already, and we used this to help show her the leverage that she really had so that she could basically be profitable from day one. She emailed me a few months later and said not only had she streamlined her hours and we'd already increased her rates, but she was so booked up she was already having to hire an additional person. So this is the power of being able to listen to your clients, hear all of this seemingly disparate information, and put it together in a way that shows them a opportunity, a unique point of leverage, whatever it might be. This also increases your value to your clients because you can see things that others don't see. And yes, this is a skill you can learn. I coach people on how to do this. So the third capability here in this human-led strategic power framework, I call narrative reframing. And really what that means is taking things that may seem like negatives and reframing them as positives. Not because you're falsifying that it is a negative and you're making it seem like a positive, but I'll share a little story with what I mean. So years ago, this was post-COVID, I had a gym that I was working with that was going through some pretty significant transitions. They were rebranding, they were moving locations to another location farther away, and they were changing their business model. And so these three seemingly negative things represented a huge opportunity for them to do what we did, which was basically create an intentional campaign that just wasn't carried out on their social media and in their email marketing. It was actually embodied within their staff, and it created these connections and these opportunities to reinforce their core values with their existing members, that by the time they opened their new location and they had this big opening bash, they not only had created a merch line out of their core values, but they ended up having a store in their new location and create an additional revenue stream. It was not something that was planned. It was something that was just a byproduct of reinforcing who their community is, their values, what they believe, what they stand for, and all of those things their community loves and is all in on. So reframing things as opportunities when they are there is going to be a huge win for bolstering your authority and your credibility to their business growth and them achieving the bigger picture goals that they have. So the fourth capability I call creative synthesis. And what this really means is that when you've established this big picture understanding of who they are, what they want, what they're trying to achieve, now you have the opportunity to help them craft their uncopyable edge to getting there. All right, so years and years ago, my very first client in my own brand and marketing agency, circa 2005. One of my clients was a commercial real estate broker in Las Vegas. He'd worked for CB Richard Ellis. He left CB Richard Ellis to start his own commercial retail brokerage. Now, Las Vegas at that time was a crazy and competitive market, extremely competitive. People wanted in. The city was doubling in size and there was just a lot of opportunity there. So going out on his own, he was taking his experience with him. He was taking his relationships, all of his knowledge of the retail market, but he needed a way to stand out and to stay memorable, not just with existing retailers he'd formed relationships with over the years, but also for new opportunities, for new relationships. So we crafted a strategy that he still uses to this day. We created a tangible resource that we shipped across the country to retailers that they would put on the walls of their conference rooms, their offices, and over time they started asking for new versions of these assets. So who was the expert that they would think of when they thought of retail expertise in the Las Vegas Valley? This client. That's it. And so there are multiple ways you can create this uncopyable differentiation, but it has to be aligned with your resources and your constraints. Both resources and constraints are important factors there. You can't devise something that you can't then execute on. You can't have this crazy creative idea that isn't going to make any connections. It has to be something that makes sense. Now, the fifth capability I call embodied credibility. And what that really means is that when you have the years of experience, you have the stories, the wins, the losses, the highs, the lows, just like your clients have all of those things. So do you. And those are your unique leverage. So a little bit about me. I was 3 years into my college journey when I decided to put my college education on hold because I was evaluating going in a very different direction. I was in communication and journalism, and I was thinking I was going to go into some type of orthopedic science. But at that time, I got a job at an advertising agency, and then a former employer recruited me to help him start his first business. And then I got pregnant and the rest was history. I never went back to college. I started my own business. A couple years later, I started my second business. And how many people have ever asked me about my degree? Zero, not one. Why? Because people really care about what you can do for them. And so if you can show that, you embody that through your experiences and you can communicate it articulately in a way that connects to something that they want, then you are not speaking from a position of inexperience, but one of authority. No one can take your experiences away from you. No one can take your ability to show a transformation that you've helped others achieve and to see themselves in that same scenario relative to what it is that they want. So embodied credibility is your permission to speak with confidence and authority. So the sixth and final capability of human-led strategic power, I call relational co-creation. And what that means is when you have this foundation of trust, when you've helped your clients get results, tangible, meaningful results, now they look to you as that strategic guide to get to that bigger picture vision and mission that they have. Now they see you as a key part of their strategy and their future, really. Recently, I watched a video of a gentleman here on YouTube, and he was talking about his business coach and how his business coach told him he was going to fire him if he did not hit the 1 billion revenue mark in his business. Now, that might seem harsh, but the point is this coach had such a deep understanding of what this gentleman is trying to achieve, trying to accomplish, what he's capable of, that he basically told him he's going to hold his feet to the fire to see it realized. He knows who he is, he knows what he wants, he knows what he's capable of, and he's going to ensure that his role in that relationship is seeing him through to that future vision. So relational co-creation is not merely something that's just possible, but is probable when you have this established trust. Now, with my clients, the way I work with them in this relational co-creation space is through a specific strategic time-blocked effort. Now, if you're an agency model, this allows you to still offer the agency services alongside that one offer, but they are separate offers. They are not combined. They are distinct and separate. So this is the freedom and the flexibility that you have when you really understand how to operate from these human-led strategic power capabilities. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and I hope that this also shows you how you can evolve and shift your business into a much more strategic model that will help create that long-term revenue that you want while helping you move out of being the one to execute and deliver all the time in your day-to-day. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.